Dive. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're here to talk about. Thank you for joining us. We have been so missing doing our giant strides and getting in the water. We just want to share more of our scuba talk with you. So thank you very much for joining us on Talk Dive Live, the place where you can fill yourself up full of scuba snacks while we share ours. So thank you very much for joining us. If you're new to us, then please go ahead, chime in, say hi on the screen, say hi in the Facebook chats. My name is Ross. I'm going to be your host for the afternoon, or at least this half hour of the afternoon. And we've got a very exciting panel set up for you today. We've got our very huggable from a long distance, David. David, why don't you say hi?
Hey everybody, glad to be back here. I've been sitting in this chair waiting to see you since Friday.
Yes, he has. I can attest to that, and so too can his hairdresser that has been trying to call him, but he can only do so collect. And we've got one of our lovable Thank you very much. We've got one of our lovable interns out there. Andrew, say hi there, Andrew.
Hey there, guys. Happy to be back.
Andrew is supporting the Dutch colonies of the Florida Keys with his support with the color orange. Thank you very much for that. And none other than our favorite Captain Jim. Thank you for joining us again, Captain Carlos. Jim. Say hi there for us. It seems that Jim is having little problems with his... Oh, yeah, he's got a little problems with his videos. Oh, you want me to say? Oh, Squeaky wants me to say hi for him as well. He misses everybody, and he hopes that you can come diving soon. Squeaky's actually with us today because we are going to be talking about fish and fish identification. And one of the most important things about fish identification is size, what color, and are they nocturnal or do they come out during the day? So let's talk to our instructor, the lovable, huggable David. David, what do you have for us about fish identification?
Well, fish identification is one of the PADI specialties that you can take. It's 2 dives. There's a little bit of reading beforehand, and basically it sort of gets you familiar and thinking about fish through, as Ross was saying, their shapes, their sizes. You sort of think of them as very big categories at first, and then you can start to sort of smallerize them and start to look at more specific species within the categories. So you might be looking at the category that includes the angelfish and butterfly fish that all have sort of a somewhat similar shape, or the silvery fish, or what have you, the odd-shaped ones, which are some of my favorites that I always try to point out when I'm guiding people. And I find that it just makes the dive more fun and enjoyable, because instead of just seeing this sort of mass of color, which is gorgeous and exciting, but you start to say, hey, I know that particular species, or I love seeing that one, I can spot that, I can name it, you can talk about it on the boat. So I think it's a really awesome specialty, makes you appreciate the ocean even more.
Cool. So sometimes we actually see a fish that we don't want to spook, or we want to be able to get a little bit closer in there because maybe they are going to swim away, or we want to see what they're going to do in their natural habitat. Andrew, can you tell us what might be a specialty that you would think would be a good one to take in order to prep yourself for a fish identification?
Yeah, I think it would be probably the PADI underwater naturalist would be another really good one to kind of take within the fish ID or before you take your fish ID course, to kind of help you understand maybe how the reefs work. And that will definitely help you when you're looking to identify fish, or when you're trying to observe them and you don't want to necessarily disturb them. You can understand how the ecosystem works, and it'll better help you be able to have the best way to observe the fish in their natural habitat.
Wonderful. That's a really good idea. The underwater naturalist is one of those specialties that has a sort of a different twist to it, because it's not just about identifying things and being able to see things in their own different natural habitats, but also the different types of species and why one species might be in this ecosystem and the other one might be in that one, right? Captain Jim, can you tell me what kinds of fish might we be able to find here on our reefs, and most specifically, what might be one of your favorite fishies?
Well, we see lots of different fish on these reefs down here. We see tarpon certain times of the year out on Molasses Reef, not for a long period of time. Those things get to be about 6 feet. We see reef sharks and nurse sharks, and we have seen hammerhead sharks, and those are the bigger critters. But we also see lionfish, unfortunately, on our reefs these days. But we see a lot of the small, little bitty guys, and the list is almost endless there for that warm water.
It would be fair to say that Key Largo is certainly a mecca for some pretty amazing fish. As a matter of fact, it is part of the second largest living coral reef system in the world, which is pretty interesting. Um, so one of the benefits of either the fish identification or the naturalist is, of course, we can link that to the advanced specialty, right? So, David, why don't you talk to us a little bit about maybe getting more out of our dives and making our dives count?
Um, I mean, always getting more out of your dives and making your dives count, I think, is partly, we talked last time about peak performance buoyancy, so you're very comfortable. But I really think also the more you know about what you're seeing down there, whether it's our Project Aware courses that we're going to be running soon, or something like Fish ID or Underwater Naturalists that allow you to understand the reef system more, understand sort of how delicate it is, but also how really dynamic it is. It just makes you really appreciate what you're seeing even more. And I think that all of these courses that are centered around understanding the reef systems, certainly for me, they make me a more excited diver. And certainly I try to be as good a diver as I can in terms of not doing any harm whatsoever, not only to the reefs, but bothering the fish and that sort of thing. So I think it all just comes together about being a great diver, these types of courses.
A very good point. One of the amazing things about being underwater is you never know where the fish really are going to be. A lot of times, if they hear bubbles or something, or if they feel that there's somebody in their natural habitat, they're going to scurry off. But sometimes they get used to you, and sometimes they're like right behind you, and you never even know it. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about this weekend during our Project Aware specialty is the living nature of being underwater, the fact that everything that's underwater is alive until you touch it. So we're going to be talking about, don't touch those animals, especially if they're delicate, they're small, they're big. Furthermore, you never know what they're going to do. I mean, some of them are kind of aggressive. Tell me something, Andrew. Have you experienced any kind of a close encounter or a up right next to you situation with a critter underwater?
I have a few times, definitely. Depending on the fish, I've had a couple of ones with a reef shark or a nurse shark just bumping me as they swim by, just kind of coming up to check out. Or sometimes a turtle will kind of do the same thing, running into you. But also, if you go a little bit smaller and you're looking at some of little smaller fish around, they can be very territorial. And so if you are, for example, a sergeant major or something like that, and you're kind of invading their territory a little bit on their coral head, they might be coming up to you and trying to get you to move away. That's definitely, I think, one of the more fun encounters you can have is having those fish come at you and just letting you know, hey, this is my area, and I don't want you in it.
Not in my house. That's what the fish are saying. It's kind of like the Garibaldi out in Southern California. We've had a lot of you actually signing in and from all over the place. So hi there. Thank you for joining us. Yes, thank you from Maryland. We've got somebody even. Keep signing in. Keep letting us know where you're in from. Do us a favor. Let us know your favorite Keys fish that you saw, or maybe a favorite story that you've got with the Keys fish, because we love to share them. Remember, we're here to share scuba snacks. You can double dip, you can triple dip, you can always dip the scuba snack. One of the things that is remarkable, or one of the things that I find that is forgotten so often, is a lot of these reef fish are not that deep. So like at 30, 40, 50, even 60 feet, you're going to see some abundance of fish. And one of the things that it really helps is to be able to maximize that bottom time. Captain Jim, can you tell us what might be a good specialty and a good gas that we can use to maximize that bottom time?
Well, back in the 80s, we found if we can take some of the nitrogen out of the mix and put a little more oxygen in there and breathe it, we load a little less inert gas so we get longer bottom times. And we call it enriched air or nitrox, and that's a specialty that we teach every day. And it dramatically will increase your bottom times on those depths from 100 feet and shallower. It's a course I recommend everybody take.
Excellent. Excellent. As a matter of fact, we actually brought it up not that long ago that on regular air at 60 feet, your maximum no decompression limit is 55 minutes. But just by having a 32% nitrox or enriched air, that goes up to 90 minutes. Now, David, can you tell us a little bit about why that is?
Yeah, so basically, as you learn in your open water diver course, once you're under pressure, you've gone deeper and you're under greater pressure, you're breathing in more nitrogen and more oxygen, but it's the nitrogen that we have to be concerned about with decompression sickness. And the nitrogen is building up in your tissues, and as you go shallower, as the dive is coming to an end, you have to go slowly so it releases out, but you also have to make sure that you haven't loaded up too much, because that's what causes decompression sickness. So when you're diving a mix of 32% oxygen, you essentially are breathing 68% nitrogen instead of 79% nitrogen. So as that's getting compressed, it's still going to be more and more nitrogen, but relative to what a normal air tank is, you're really bringing in a lot less nitrogen into your system. So your bottom time is extended. Or if you're doing the same bottom time, you've actually created a safety margin because you haven't uploaded as much nitrogen into your system. So you could look at it either way.
Wow. So it's really like just planning ahead, which is something that seems like it would be a really good thing to do. Not to mention the fact that we're gaining that much more time when we do come out. Looks like we've got people that are calling in from as far as Hungary. So when they come out, they want to make sure that they've got the best dive possible, right? Now, Andrew, I know that you haven't worked that much on the boats yet, but have you learned how to blend nitrox yet and use it?
Being here on the docks, one of our main responsibilities is learning how to and blending nitrox. And so it's definitely a very helpful skill to have. And you can always tell when the divers go out on those boats and they're using nitrox, they're really having a good time out there. And so definitely a useful certification to get.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, a couple episodes ago, we talked about air and the way that we produce air and make air and dry it and do all those wonderful things. The DJ hit us with polysyllabic words that I don't even know that I can remember any longer. But one of the things that he's going to do is he's going to come on and he's going to also show us how to blend nitrox or enriched air. So this is going to be a really cool episode. In the meantime, I'd like to go back to Captain Jim because I know Captain Jim has a really hard motto that he goes by, something about tires and diving on gases. Can you tell us a couple other benefits of diving enriched air, please, Captain Jim?
Extension of the bottom time is the primary advantage to diving nitrox. Some people at one point thought that it helped decrease some narcosis, but we know now that oxygen is equally, if not more so, narcotic than nitrogen, so it doesn't really change our gas narcosis at all. Extension of the bottom time. That's the gig. That's the reason to dive nitrox. You know, if you go on vacation and you calculate how much it costs you to go on vacation and each dive you do, how many minutes you stay underwater, nitrox makes that just so much better, and your vacation dollars go a lot further if you dive nitrox.
Now, Captain Jim, I've heard it said that it means that you can go deeper. Can you talk to this about it? Talk to this query a little bit better?
Well, that's not exactly true because what we're concerned about is the partial pressure of oxygen, and that's what limits our depth primarily. And so, the more oxygen you have in your mix, the more restricted in depth you are. Whereas with air, if you do the arithmetic, you can dive air down to when our recreational limit's 135 feet, I think, is our recreational limit. But with nitrite, that limit is right around 110. So a lot of people do think you can, but that's just not.
I see. And actually, the recreational limit, being that the recreational limit is 130, air, you can go a lot deeper, but depending on the blend of nitrox. And this would be something that you would use when you were taking the course. And also, you might want to actually have one. This is an O2 analyzer, an oxygen analyzer. And what it allows you to do is actually set the amount, you calibrate what the actual amount of oxygen is. So you can test a tank that is supposed to have nitrox in it versus a tank that has air in it so that you know what your maximum operating depth is when you go diving on that tank. Because as Captain Jim said, you can go longer, but it is going to make your dives a little shallower. Not extremely, but a little bit more shallow. And this is actually something that we'll talk about even when you start on your open water course. Starting your open water course with us is very easy. You can either contact us directly, you can send us a note on Facebook, you can go to our website, sign up for the open water course directly because we can get you an open water e-learning code right away so that you can start learning in the comfort of your own home, put your feet up, have a glass of wine, because there's nothing better than a little wine and a little scuba snack at the same time. So I'd like to go back to David because I know David has some more interesting information about the nitrox, and also, David, can you tell us? I think we're going to need to start talking about some cool dives that we've done. Can you tell us something that maybe you wouldn't have seen had you not been on nitrox because of the time that it allowed you?
Yeah. So our very popular dives here. Well, we have many very popular dives. So one thing that people get very excited about are wrecks, and we have some wrecks that are all sitting at about 130 feet. But the really cool parts of the wrecks, and we're talking about the Spiegel Grove here. We're talking about the Duane. We're talking about the Bib. Those are the three deep wrecks that we go to. The really awesome parts of those wrecks, which is where you really want to see all the cool stuff, is somewhere between 80 and 100 feet. You really don't need to go any deeper than that. And as Jim mentioned, if you're on a 32 mix, your max depth is 110 feet, 111 feet, which is deeper than you really need to go on these wrecks. But the thing is, when you're at 90 or 100 feet, you're really building up a lot of nitrogen at that point if you're on air. And this is where the nitrox really kicks in because it's going to give you more time to enjoy the wreck and potentially to see that bull shark swim by or the school of Atlantic spadefish that I saw last time I was on the Spiegel Grove just sort of following us around. And you just don't feel as rushed. So it's definitely on those wreck dives. Almost everybody is diving nitrox, and it's well worth it to do so, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how just a little bit of patience, a little bit more time, and sometimes just sitting there, waiting for them to come out, and they'll come out, and that moment happens. Andrew, have you done any diving out here where you just happen to be at the right place at the right time?
I haven't had the fortune to do too many dives here, but I would say yes. There's been a few dives now where you just happen upon, whether it's a really cool eagle ray that you're seeing, or last time I dove the Spiegel when we were down there. I got to see some giant groupers, which I just think are really cool. Or if you get to see a Goliath grouper, that is always a treat as well.
Oh, and those are pretty dang big, aren't they? I play the punch buggy yellow and punch buggy blue with my son. I think I'm going to have to start playing the punch buggy or the punch Goliath grouper game with divers from now on. Captain Jim, what about you? Have you been on a dive where you just happened to be at the right place at the right time and suddenly something just came upon and you saw it?
Yes, a number of times, and the list is long, but the most striking one I remember is being down in a relatively confined space on the Spiegel Grove, and a Goliath grouper that was almost as big as a Volkswagen was sharing that space with me, and he wanted to let me know that there wasn't room for both of us. And he used his unique ability to thump, 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 and and recommend that I get out of there, which I did.
And I would say that that was probably some of the best advice you could have taken from Mr. Goliath Grouper. Yes, they do. It's rather resonant when they do that. What about you guys? We'd like to hear from you what some of the more incredible, because you happen to be at the right place at the right time, critters you've seen or encounters you've had. For instance, I one time was swimming up. I was up in the a little bit more north of here, swimming up through a hole in a wreck, and I just happened to go into a room in which a very large 6-foot barracuda who was piked out looked at me, and I looked back at him, and I thought, I'm going to let you have this room all to yourself. I just don't need to be here any longer. And so I cleverly just went down a little bit like this, and then I didn't need to share that room with him anymore. But we want to hear more stories from you as well. We want to share your scuba snacks. We're going to be live again on Wednesday. We hopefully will have a treat for you. We're going to see. Hope the weather holds out. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. We're also going to be live on Saturday for our Project Aware specialty. That's going out to everybody. If you haven't done so already, and if you'd like to, please, by all means, sign up. We're going to be delivering the entire specialty through a Zoom cast. So that's going to be interactive, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So once more, let's just have a favorite dive site from everybody. David, I'm going to let you go last because I'm going to give you a moment to think about what your favorite dive site is. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Andrew. We know you haven't done much diving, but still, we want to hear what's your favorite dive site, Andrew?
Favorite dive site here in Key Largo, I'll go with the aquarium. And as we're talking about Fish ID and Underwater Naturalist, that's just a dive site where you get to see everything, and your Fish ID specialty is definitely going to come into handy as you're looking around and you're seeing all the different kinds of species of fish. There's something new you can find almost everywhere you look when you're on that dive.
Fantastic. And that's wonderful advice. Those are two excellent specialties for that site itself. As a matter of fact, that's one of my favorite as well. Captain Jim, what would be, and we know that the Spiegel she's near and dear to you, but I'm going to challenge you. What might be another dive site that's one of your favorites?
The city of Washington, which is another wreck that's a bit further north where we are, so about 40 feet of water. I'm sorry, about 25 feet of water. She was in the Havana Harbor at the beginning of the Spanish-American War when the USS Maine was bombed, and crew members from the city of Washington rescued some of the sailors that were blown into the water of USS Maine. And I like diving the city because of that history, but also because she's been down since the early 1900s and has a tremendous amount of growth on there. And I see more lobsters on that wreck than anywhere else.
Ah, there you go. Another reason to go diving, just the history of it, being able to share, sometimes just knowing what actually lived on that wreck itself. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. Yes, Valmiro, I would agree. The Spiegel Grove is an amazing dive. Now, David, we've given you some time to think about it, so you're going to have to wow us now. We'd like to know, what is your now favorite dive site here in the Keys?
Actually, this is easy today. I was prepared to talk about Eagle Ray Alley. Eagle Ray Alley is on Molasses Reef. It's very close to Winch Hole, which a couple of people have mentioned on the show. Eagle Ray Alley is awesome. In the summer, that's where it gets its name because there's a lot of eagle rays here. But it's so much more than that. And it's just this amazing sand channel, and you have ledges on either side of it. And if it's also perfect for a fish ID course, because pretty much like anything you learn in the fish ID course, you're going to see like so many of those types of fish along the way. You end up, depending on which direction you're going in, you might end up at Hole in the Wall, which is a really cool swim through. So it's sort of part of Eagle Ray Alley. And actually, one time when I was on it, and sometimes you're just on fire and you see everything, and sometimes you don't. After I had seen all of the different fish that I really love, and that I like to point out to people, I somehow managed to find a tiny, tiny nudibranch, which was smaller than my pinky fingernail. And it was just like, I couldn't believe that, first of all, that I saw it because it was tiny, but also I was with some divers who were into that kind of thing, and it was just one of the best dives.
Yes, you know what? Sometimes it's the little things that just blow your mind, especially when you're in this huge ocean and something's just right there. So I'd like to say again, thank you from all of us here at Rainbow Reef. We miss you all. We hope that you've enjoyed some of our scuba snacks. We hope that you've enjoyed talking and sharing about scuba. We would like to hear from you. We want to know your dive sites. We want to know what you want to do and what you want to see when you get back here, when you start diving with us. We want to share some scuba snacks with you because that's what we're here for, the scuba diving. So once again, join us this weekend for the Project Aware. And thank you to our panelists and Linky. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you on the boat soon.